let's get practical. Okay. If you're in any kind of leadership, whether in your home, your business, your religious organization, your team, people don't follow perfection. They follow presence. They follow consistency. They follow someone who's grounded. They follow someone who can say, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm committed to the process. Authenticity in leadership creates trust. And where there's trust, there's movement. Welcome to the Shattered Mindset Podcast. Wisdom from life's turning points and defining moments. I'm your host, Melvin Larry, and let me start by saying this. There's something powerful, something liberating about being authentically you. But let's be real, that's not always easy. In fact, sometimes it takes more courage to be yourself than it does to conform to the expectations of others. And if we're honest, the world doesn't always reward authenticity, at least not right away. It often rewards performance, masks, personas, titles, and appearances. But what it truly respects, what it ultimately remembers, is character, integrity, and someone bold enough to live and lead from a place of truth. That's what I want to talk about today. Not perfection, not polish, but the courage to be authentic. Why does this topic really matter right now? Over the course of this podcast, I've shared stories from my own journey, my time in corporate, my years in entrepreneurship, the transition from leadership in structure to leadership in freedom. I've talked about identity, mindset, reinvention, and the legacy we're all building, whether we realize it or not. But this episode is kind of personal in that I want to share something in a timely way because we're living in a time where it's easier than ever to project something you're not. We're curated, filtered, measured by likes, followers, and performance metrics. But one of the metrics that matters most, peace of mind, that internal alignment, that feeling of looking in the mirror and knowing you showed up as you today. You see, there's a parallel in authenticity and alignment. Let me say this. Being authentic doesn't mean being rebellious or saying, this is just how I am or who I am, take it or leave it. All right. That's not authenticity. All right. That's stubbornness dressed up in individualism. Authenticity is deeper than that. It's alignment. It's when your values, your actions, and your intentions all tell the same story. You see, I've led teams in high pressure environments. I've been the one giving performance evaluations and the one building a business from scratch with nothing but belief and a burning desire to succeed. And I've discovered that when you lead from a place that's not true to who you are, you might succeed temporarily, but it's not sustainable. All right. At some point, the mask cracks. The weight becomes too heavy, and the price of pretending starts to outweigh the benefits of fitting in. And there's an underlying fear behind the mask. Let's pause for a second and talk about the fear behind it all. All right. I had fears when I contemplated doing this podcast: fear of failing, fear of opening myself up, fear of the criticisms that can come from social media, fear of giving up my private self. We fear that if people really know us or really knew us, they'd reject us. They'd question our qualifications. They'd stop following, stop listening, stop respecting. But let me challenge that, okay? What if the exact thing you're hiding is the thing that makes you relatable? What if your flaws are where your influence actually starts? What if your transparency gives permission for someone else to finally be real? I've seen it, I've lived it, and I felt the weight of trying to keep everything on brand when what was needed was just to be honest. Authenticity requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires courage. But courage doesn't mean the absence of fear, it means choosing to move forward with the fear, not for approval, but for freedom. Look, there's also a link between authenticity and leadership. Let's get practical. Okay. If you're in any kind of leadership, whether in your home, your business, your religious organization, your team, you need to hear this. People don't follow perfection, they follow presence. They follow consistency. They follow someone who's grounded. They follow someone who can say, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm committed to the process. Authenticity in leadership creates trust. And where there's trust, there's movement. And where there's movement, there's growth. I think about a dad telling one of his children to jump into his outstretched hands. You know, it's trust that takes the child into movement of leaping to dad. Okay. So whether you're leading a company, a family, a 4 year old, a movement, or just trying to lead your own life, you have to ask, am I showing up as the real me? In a personal reflection, let me be transparent about something. When I left corporate after decades of structure, of titles, of hierarchy, I had to face some truths. I didn't have the armor of management anymore. No organization chart position to really validate me, and no team under me, just me and my wife as my partner. And I'm telling you, it was uncomfortable. I had to rediscover who I was outside of what I did. That's where authenticity started for me. It's humbling to realize how much of your identity has been tied to what you used to be. But it's also freeing when you realize you don't have to be anyone else to be impactful. I had to learn to lead from who I am, not just from what I've done. That by no means, means to forget the value and the significance of productivity and results. Those things are also important. But let's get real. There are a few signs you may not be showing up authentically. You constantly feel the need to improve yourself or to prove yourself. You say yes when everything inside you is screaming no. You leave conversations wondering, why didn't I speak up? Oh my goodness, how many times have I done that? You avoid stillness because silence forces you to confront yourself. Sound familiar? This isn't judgment now, it's awareness because you can't heal what you don't acknowledge. And let's just take it a step further. Sometimes the signs of not being authentic don't show up as insecurity or hesitation, they show up as overcompensation. That's where you might dominate conversation to avoid being questioned. You might overachieve to distract from inner doubt, hide behind credentials, titles, or status to feel valuable. You micromanage others because you're afraid to trust. Even keep people at arm's length, thinking distance protects your image. I was always hesitant to let people in too close too soon because I didn't want them to take me for granted. Okay. Now, a lack of authenticity doesn't always look like shrinking. Sometimes it looks like inflating, puffing up to avoid being found out, performing instead of connecting, controlling instead of trusting. And just like the quieter signs, these behaviors are often rooted in the same place, fear of not being enough. Again, this isn't judgment, it's awareness. Because whether you shrink or you perform, the result is often the same. You're not fully free and you're not fully seen. And until you are, you can't be fully known, fully trusted, or fully effective in the spaces you're meant to lead. So, what are the rewards of authenticity? Let's flip the script and talk about it. When you start living authentically, you attract people who value you for who you really are. You experience peace even when things aren't perfect. You lead with more confidence because there's no act to maintain, and you begin to live with integrity within yourself because your outside matches your inside. That's a powerful way to live. Let me leave you with something, okay? Maybe just a few takeaways. If you're wondering how to build the courage to be more authentic, maybe start here. Get quiet enough to hear yourself. Do it with maybe journaling, reflection, and prayer. You can't be authentic if you don't even know what you think and feel. Man, when I'm journaling, things just come out of me that I couldn't have spoken them just speaking it out. But when I sit down and I start writing, I start journaling, things start to come forth that I didn't sometimes even know were there. All right. Next, you want to stop being overly measured. Life isn't a stage, okay? Speak from the heart, share from the soul. I like to talk from a position of love, wisdom, and strength. All right? Now, next, you want to choose integrity over image. Sometimes the right choice isn't the most popular, but it's the one you'll be proud of 5, 10 years from now. Next, practice safe spaces. Practice in safe spaces. Start with people who love you. The more you practice being real, the easier it gets. Then go, just decide to let go of outcome. That was a big challenge for me because I was affixed to outcomes, sometimes positive, sometimes negative, often negative. All right. But we have to let go of outcomes because really, like I said, this has always been hard for me. But you can't control how others receive you. You can only control how you show up. Here's the truth: the most powerful legacy you can leave is you, the real you, not the curated version, not the filtered version, just the one who lived, loved, led, and learned authentically. That's the version your children will remember. That's the version your team will trust. That's the version that makes a mark. So, wherever you are right now, maybe in transition, maybe feeling pressure to perform, maybe just trying to figure it all out. I want to encourage you. You don't have to impress, you have to align. Live from your truth, lead from your heart, and give the world the gift of your authenticity. Because, you know, that's what changes things. That's what changes things with you and people. And that's what breaks the mold. And that's what shatters the mindset that says you're only valuable when you're perfect. Okay? Look, until the next time, keep adapting, keep evolving, and keep reaching for those new horizons. I'll see you next time on the Shattered Mindset podcast. Take care, take charge, and God bless.